30 seconds, 30 seconds. All right, we'll call this general committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here this evening. We start our meeting with the following land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are in the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude for the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. We'll now take 30 seconds to reflect. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem. And that the Council for the City of Peterborough recognizes the principles contained in our Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. All right, adoption of minutes of August 25th, 2025. If I can have a mover. Moved by Councillor Degay. Any comments or questions, errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. And that is carried. Mr. Clerk, any disclosure of pecuniary interest this evening?
Mr. Chair, I see none at this time.
All right, we have two items coming out of closed session this evening. First item, land disposition. That council approve the recommendation outlined in report LSRS 25-014 dated September 15th, 2025 of the Commissioner Legislative Services as followed. A, that the road allowance fronting 345 Armour Road be declared surplus. B, that the notice requirements of bylaw 9562 be waived. C, that staff be directed to proceed as outlined in closed session report LSRS 25-014 dated September 15th, 2025 of the Commissioner Legislative Service. Moved by Councillor Purnell. Any comments or questions? We'll take a vote. And that is carried. Second item, agreement. that council approve the recommendation outlined in report LSRS 25-011 dated September 15th, 2025 of the Commissioner of Legislative Services as follows. That council approves a request by Rice Lake Snow Drifters Incorporated respecting a proposed use consisting part of 841 O'Brien Drive, 821 O'Brien Drive, 432 Ashburnham Drive, and 420 Ashburnham Drive, and staff be authorized to proceed as outlined in report LSR 25-011 respecting council's approval hereby granted in relation to Rice Lake Snowdrifter Inc.'s use of the subject lands. Moved by Councillor Baldwin. Any comments or questions? We'll take a vote. All right, we're going to vote on that again. And that is carried. All right, colleagues, we'll move to our consent agenda. Let me know if you'd like to speak to any of the following items. 12A, June 20th, 2025 financial report. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Burke. 12B, site alteration bylaw implementation. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Hakey. 12C, affordable rental housing subclass information report. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Reel. 12D, youth transit pass program. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Purnell. 13E, approval to replace specialized work truck. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Chica. 12F, delegated authority for municipally funded rent supplement agreements. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Reel. 12G, recycling non-eligible sources. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Burke. 12H, report on necessary measures taken to disinfect water treatment plant. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Burke. So nothing for consent this evening. So let's get right into it. 12A, June 20th, 2025 financial report unaudited. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. And through you. On June 10th, Council gave explicit direction to staff to come back to Council within 90 days to report on an enforcement strategy that took place the week of May 27th, 2025. Council's explicit direction was clear: for staff to provide us with a comprehensive breakdown of all costs associated with the enforcement strategy. What has been provided to us is inadequate. The comprehensive breakdown we asked for consists of only 2 sentences and 4 vague lines of expenses. No detail from staff, no explanation. And this information, the 2 sentences, are buried in a 24-page financial report from Richard Freeman. Unacceptable. Council needs the information we asked for to be transparent. We need a full accounting of how taxpayers' resources are being used by staff, especially when we ask for it. Why did we get such little information? Comprehensive means complete, including all of or nearly all aspects of something. What we got from staff does not meet this definition. Instead of a proper report, instead of what was asked for, we received a few lines reducing the cost of a major enforcement operation to under $8,000 in mostly overtime expenses. That figure does not capture the true scale of staff time, shelter operations, or resources reallocated for many divisions involved. And let's be clear, the motion was titled Enforcement Strategy, not overtime costs related to enforcement, which is the heading of the chart that we received. This is about more than the numbers. It's about whether our approach to encampments are fiscally responsible, whether it's effective, and whether it's humane. The week of the 27th, unhoused residents were displaced for a few days only to return soon after. Nothing was achieved, not for them and not for the neighbors and business owners in the area who are asking us for lasting solutions. I'm asking that the enforcement strategy of the financial update be deferred back to staff and that an adequate and standalone report be brought back to council no later than October 27th at our general committee meeting. To include what was asked for in the original motion, as well as a standalone report with 1, detailed and full accounting of all staff time, whether regular or overtime, across all involved divisions. All costs related to the operation and implementation of the temporary shelter at Morrow Building, supplies, equipment, fencing, security, legal, and any other related expenses. All service impacts elsewhere in the city caused by the diversion of staff resources. And 2, an assessment of the outcomes and effectiveness of the enforcement strategy, including whether residents displaced from the encampment were rehoused, returned to the encampment, or were otherwise supported. Council asked for clarity on this, and we deserve nothing less. I have my deferral in writing that I'm going to submit to the clerk. Thank you.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Burke to defer the enforcement portion with those amendments. We'll get those on the screen. So speaking to the deferral, Councillor Baldwin and Reel. Councillor Baldwin.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I don't know whether to ask the councillor or the person who might be writing the report. I'm assuming through you, Mr. Chair, would you be able to clarify with the with Councillor Burke if it's Mr. Freeman writing the report, or that would be the first clarification. The second clarification I would like is to know if how many departments and how much work hours are going to be required in order to have a fulsome report that he's asking for, that Councillor Burke's asking for, by October the 27th. So through you, I'd just like to get some clarification. Who's going to be writing the report? How many departments would be involved in that, and how much time it would take? Can we meet the October the 27th standard? Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Freeman, my guess would be 3 departments minimum. Can you give any feedback on how many departments and whether you'd be able to meet the October 20th deadline?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I provided all of the information pretty much I had without guessing as to what the costs would be. I acknowledged in the report that there were likely other costs involved, except I don't have that information. I think what the councilor's looking for is almost like an activity-based costing of the enforcement strategy for that week in time. It's like getting the lawyer's bill in your hand, and he's broken down the, should apologize to my elbow partner here. It's like getting the lawyer's bill in your hand, and he's itemized his time down to this, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, every phone call, because that's really what essentially is being asked of staff. We simply don't track our time at that level of detail, that granularity. And the staff time that's involved, I think that he's referred to as a lot of the salaried staff, so who don't receive any overtime. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't have the information. I acknowledge that probably there was other costs. I focused on what I could report out accurately, what was incremental to what you, council, approved as part of the budget process. So when it talks about enforcement, we hire people to do enforcement. Whether they do it in this park, that park, or another park, I don't keep track of that. We don't keep track of that. I don't keep track of that. So I'm not sure how we'd come up with those amounts without simply guessing. Mr. Chairman, I wasn't prepared to guess. I was prepared to report out the information that I had, what I believe to be accurate, incremental to the budget that you approved. Mr. Chairman, those are my comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's all the information I need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baldwin. Speaking to the deferral, Councillor Reel.
Through the chair to Mr. Freeman, I will be supporting the deferral. Maybe you could give me your Coles Notes version of what the motion should have read. Because I thought it was pretty explicit when I read the report. There was nothing there. I thought it was pretty explicit what Councillor Burke asked for as a complete costing of what our enforcement is with this problem. So you say, well, it's going to take so much time and so much effort. So maybe you could tell me, what do you think the wording of the motion should be? Because I thought it was pretty plain to me. We wanted all the costs, not some overtime. costs, all of the complete costs of what it's cost from day one for enforcement. Because we've been down this path before, but using other venues to house people, and there's a cost associated with it. So please tell me, because I'm at a loss of what, if I'm going to write a motion, what it's going to be, that would be clear and concise.
Commissioner,
To do your job.
I think in fairness, it just broke down those 4 days in May, but Commissioner Freeman, did you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I did focus on that discrete time in May that I believe that the motion referred to, not the complete enforcement strategy of the city of Peterborough or the shelter strategy, and whether or not it is successful. That was not the focus of what I believe the motion to be. The motion, as I understood it, was a financial exercise talking about a discrete period of time. So again, I would submit to council, for instance, one of the costs that I reported as nil was fire. When we asked fire services, did you incur any costs that week? The answer was no. So I think that was acknowledged by fire services. Council budgets for fire services 24/7, 365. Whether they're going to this call, that call, or another call, and whether they went to Moore Park, they certainly don't report that out to me. I would have to know who was on the platoon shift, what vehicle they were driving, how long were they there. I would even have to know that tonight we were going to spend an inordinate amount of time focusing on this question because we're still adding to the cost as the councillors outlined here tonight in chambers. So I would really need to know, without being too facetious, who is in chambers, how much time are we impacting here this evening? There is, admittedly, it's a bit of a rabbit hole. Personally, that's how I felt.
Point of order.
Councillor Rook, what's your point of order?
I just think
Procedural point of order?
the point of order is I believe it's out of order for there to be conjecture about assumptions made about a motion that is very clear cut. The first motion was clear cut. It says comprehensive and all costs.
Okay.
The second motion.
Put you back on the list.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Rio, you have the floor.
I'm at a loss again here about this rabbit hole you think you're going down. We explicitly asked for costs. I don't see it in the report, the cost. You give some overtime cost, but there was a whole bunch of people involved in this here, and there's costs associated with it. Of all of the ones that were participating, whether it was Public Works, which was our Parks and Rec, which was our social services, whether it was police, whether it was our enforcement people, whatever, all of those costs associated with that, not just overtime costs. What is the cost for us for the enforcement of that? That's what's being asked. I don't see that as a cost. I see an $8,000 overtime cost. Well, no, there was a whole bunch of people involved here, an enormous amount of cost. Also, the vehicles that were used, all of that stuff. I want to see every nickel and dime, because if the money isn't being well spent for what we're doing, then we need to get a solution to the problem, because I don't see it working when one person used the fire hall. Sorry, don't see it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rio.
Mr. Chairman, if council would like costing at that level of granularity, at that level of detail, then I would certainly could return with what it would take to transition our financial systems to that activity level detail that council is looking for. Now, I would warn you that would come with a startling number in terms of the cost to change our systems and the additional staffing to track all of the costs. And that's assuming, and again, I'm making assumptions, but I need to then change the culture of how people track their time, where they track their time, how they track it, inputs in. If there's not accurate inputs going into the system, I can't get accurate information coming out of it. And so, I mean, if we want to go down that path, I'm happy to provide, come back at a future time with what would that look like and how would we get there. That's not overnight. That would be a period of time, but I'm happy to return with that. That would not come with my recommendations. I don't think that's a priority of council, but anyway, that's just my own opinion.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner. So speaking to the deferral, I have Councillor Chika and Burke a second time. Councillor Chika.
Thanks, through you, Chair Beamer. Just to present the argument for having a separate report, which is what the motion asked for. A separate report has a number. It has, all the components of what a report contains. and it provides the opportunity to debate it publicly with the points that are laid out. There's an opportunity for the public to delegate to that report, and it was asking for a breakdown specifically of the costs of the enforcement approach. I don't think I understood it to be about the hair splitting in terms of staff time that it takes to decipher some of this. I think it had to do with the labor, the components of, you know, Brock Mission being set there, and the staff readiness for it, materials, all of it, resources, that sort of a costing. So that's what I understood the motion to be. We did not get a report. So I support the deferral because I feel that the purpose also of the report was to create a comparative. That was the reason we wanted a breakdown and a costing, so we could create a comparative to this other shelter models that we've already rejected and perhaps may reconsider and may reopen in a different way in the future. That's why we needed a report with a concise breakdown and summary. You know, we've had doctors write letters about please reconsider the support, financial support for One City, because, and we're talking dozens and dozens of doctors that serve the emergency services at PRHC, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, as things unfold, we may need to reconsider. We needed a comparative. We needed something to put side by side to say this cost this much and this cost that much. And what was the effectiveness and of either approach. So that's why we needed it. That's why we should have a deferral to get the full report. And I thank Councillor Burke for making the motion.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chika, and colleagues. The deferral's on the screen. Councillor Burke a second time, and then Councillor Reel a second time. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair Beamer, and to my colleagues. Like the frustrating part about all this is I don't feel I should have to make a deferral at all. I feel that what the original motion that was passed for by council asked for explicitly, using language like comprehensive, using language like all costs, I feel that I shouldn't have to make a deferral at all. We are not, and you know, Mr. Freeman, with all due respect, I don't appreciate you setting up a hangman argument for us talking about you having to recost how the city does things, because again, that's the other side of the spectrum. One side of the spectrum here is that we have asked for something explicitly, and we were given two sentences from staff to provide context for a chart with 4 line items of costs that was titled overtime costs. So I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel about how you scrutinize down to every phone call. That's not the interpretation of the motion that I'm asking for. I used words like all costs, and I used words like comprehensive in the hopes that council could have an understanding about what the specific enforcement strategy the week of May 27th looked like and what it cost the taxpayers of the city of Peterborough. Because our criticism is that that strategy is not very effective. And if you're just taking the overtime costs at $8,000, which was referenced in this report, let's just set aside everything else and just use those costs for $8,000. The city of Peterborough spent $8,000 in overtime for a excuse me, I have the floor.
Councillor Burke has the floor. Councillor Burke.
Thank you. So to get back from being interrupted, we spent, if we go by the information which was in the report, which is titled overtime, and we imagine that we spent $8,000 of taxpayers' resources for a 3-day enforcement approach that actually ended up having people that were evicted from the encampment being set up the very next day, that's a problem, just with this information. So yes, I don't think I should ask or have to do another deferral, because I believe that the requirements of the first motion have not been met. When I title a motion enforcement strategy, I would expect that the enforcement comes to the table with the report to outline to council what that strategy is and where they're spending the dollars and how they're activating resources from public works. So they're pulling guys from picking up garbage and taking care of the parks and fixing our roads and fixing potholes. They're pulling them off those day-to-day duties to come and help with the enforcement approach. And you have left us with no sense of how that impacts the city with the information you gave us. And I think that's unacceptable. Because what I asked for is not down to the nitty-gritty, every phone call, every coffee break. No, I want to get a sense from the people involved in this strategy, because let me tell you, Councillor Rial and I, as homelessness chairs, we're not involved. We're not involved.
Okay,
So
just the deferral.
So
Keep it to the deferral.
Exactly, and the deferral. So the deferral is also about the enforcement strategy, and I believe that this council needs to see answers as to how enforcement is managing and operating these encampment approaches, like the one that we have right now at Carnegie, where no one's staying at the fire hall for $80,000 for 90 days. No one's staying there, right? And yes, the parks are cleared for 90 days, but what's going to happen on day 91? I imagine the very encampment that we're trying to come up for a solution for will start to be, people will start to set up again. So back to the deferral. This deferral is specifying, re-specifying again to put to staff, hey staff, you guys came up with an enforcement strategy on May 27th for an encampment in the city. What are the costs that were associated with that approach? And I want a little bit more detail than what was provided in the 2 sentences and in the 4 line items that were buried in a 24-page financial report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Reel, second time to the deferral.
Through the chair, I mean, it's interesting the way the questions are being answered. I have a feeling that we don't have an accounting process of how the taxpayer dollars are being spent in the city of Peterborough. You should be able to go in and whatever it is and saying this is our cost. I'm getting a feeling that the taxpayers, how their taxpayer dollars are being spent by the corporation of the city of Peterborough. That's really problematic for me. Not just this here deferral here tonight, asking one thing about what the cost was for the enforcement. You should be able to give us every nickel and dime of taxpayers' money and how it's being spent in every department in this city. If you don't know that, then we have a huge problem here. A huge problem.
Sia Elena, well, Councillor, yep, okay. Sia Elena.
Through Mr. Chair. All I will say that we will get the information which is needed. It is a very time-consuming effort, and respectfully to say that we are not accountable. That's not right, sir. You can come and check each and every book. We are like an open book here. So making this statement that that there is a accounting issue, sir, that's not the right case. Everything is for the public, and everybody can come and scrutinize our books from first page to the last page. Now, coming back to the accounting, sir, it takes time. I'll give you an example. Like if we are going to the park, if I go there or somebody else go there, there are people who are salary daytime, so we don't track their effort because they are on the shift 8 to 8. In that 8 to 8, whatever they do, that's part of their salary. So to go and break down, getting that, oh, you went there, you devoted your time, it takes time. That's all I have to say, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're good, Keith. Councillor Reel.
Glad the CEO has made some, say that he's going to look into this, but I certainly don't like the inference here that, we have the books. If you've got the books, there's the numbers. Pretty simple to me. What's all the big jobs? You just press the button and there's the numbers come up. So if you've got the books, give us the numbers. Pretty simple for me.
Thank you, Councillor Reel. Any further comments on the deferral? Mayor Leal, deferral?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a question for Commissioner Semenowski. Commissioner, at Public Works, do they punch time cards for every job? For example, if they were going to James Street at East City to fix a pothole, do they punch a card to say they're going to that task, and when it's finished, they punch another card to go on to the second task? Or do they just generally have their work tasks for a given day, which may include everything from A to Z to get completed in that workday? The reason I ask the question, if we're trying to get into the minutia of where our Public Works people do, the only way you could find that out is if they were punching time cards for every job that they do. And I'm not sure that's the case. Could you just comment on that for me, please?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. The budget is structured with categories such as road maintenance, water services, could be also road patrol. So there is a level of detail, but not to the level that may be looking for at the question tonight. So the staff will go out, they'll have the work assignments, they'll do the work. It's not a precise process. They may be out doing some road maintenance, and that may turn into some other activity. So there's an attempt to try to identify that, but it is not a precise process. It is staff running around trying to get the priority work done based on a priority process.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could keep going then, through you to Commissioner Szymanowski, basically what we have, if there were 6 public works people there on May the 27th for 4 hours at $40 an hour, 6 times 40, that would be the cost allocation for that particular job task on that particular day that they were assessing with a cleanup. Is that essentially correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's possibly correct, because there may also be an effort for that group for the day. Whether they actually slice that up for that particular effort is a function of how we budget for it. So it may be more general. However, that being said, if the priority is to find those cost elements, we can always bring those into the processes. But the accounts that are structured now are not that specific.
And it's, if I could continue in that vein, because I have some background in this area. So then we'd have to allocate the cost of the foreman for that particular day for those 6 people, plus the manager, plus the director, if they were spending any time at all on this particular initiative. Is that essentially correct, Mr. Szymanowski?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay. And I take it that's the kind of information that you're looking for, Councillor Burke? That type of cost allocation for people that were working on the encampment on that particular, those 3 days, is that right?
I mean, not,
I understand.
yeah, I'm not necessarily asking that for exact costs that would be unreasonable to ask for. What I'm trying to make the point about is this, is that if you work for Public Works and you're planting tulips and you're fixing potholes and you're picking up garbage in the DBIA and you get pulled off because we have an encampment in the city and it's all hands on deck via the enforcement, and we have to assume that that call is made via the enforcement because they're not here tonight presenting to us from their side as to how this has all come together. And this is one of the unanswered questions that I was hoping to have answered within asking for this information. Yet it wasn't answered. It was in a financial report. So am I hearing then that from Commissioner Szymanowski that, you know, there's no impact to Public Works if a crew gets pulled off of their day-to-day duties to deal with an all hands on deck encampment cleanup situation? That doesn't have a ripple effect and there's no impact into how the rest of the work is done for the city of Peterborough?
Commissioner?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there is an impact for sure, and there is the impact does have a ripple effect. Just like the ice storm had a ripple effect. So ideally getting to that level of costing would be beneficial. It sounds like there's a lot of interest in certain areas within operations, and I'm happy to work with our finance department to see what that can look like. However, for this particular request, there may be, as the Commissioner of Finance mentioned, that there may be some additional effort needed to extract that information. And I'll be able to support him for our component of that. There are other components as well that would need to be addressed, and that would be something that the Commissioner of Finance would have to, as he described, have to tease out.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Lille, second time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Szymanowski, I'm not trying to be funny here, but if a water main collapsed on George Street, we'd be pulling every available person in every department to get down there to fix that water main. I mean, this is not an unusual occurrence within a municipality.
Through Mr. Chair, that is correct. The people that are qualified to do the work in that response will be brought in as needed to make sure we have the resources to address the emergency for sure.
All right, Councilor Brooke, third and final.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. Through you to Mr. Szymanowski. I'm trying to pick up on the thread of the conversation. And so what I experienced when we had the power outage, the storm, was that we had to take scrupulous records of where our services from the city were being utilized for the storm, because we needed to be provided for funding to be reimbursed for how city's resources were redistributed because of an event. And so here I am asking the same thing. It is not egregious to ask for this. It does not require a whole new system of costing out how people spend their every 5 minutes at the city. That's not what I'm asking for. And I'm actually offended that was even put into the conversation. What I'm asking for is that we have a pattern of events through the enforcement side of the city, which are impacting other resources. And I'm trying through this motion to get a sense of what that impact looks like. And you know, my question to Mr. Freeman or CAO Reyna through the chair is why, when this motion was entitled enforcement strategy, why, when this motion was about an enforcement approach, do we find the information that was asked for by council in a financial update?
Commissioner Friedman and then CAO Reyna. Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, the title to this section of the report is called Enforcement Strategy. I'm not sure where this notion that it's just overtime is picked up, other than I tried to be explicit down below with each of the divisions reporting out what the nature of the elements are that they were reporting. So when it talked about social services, it said shelter staffing. It didn't say social services staff overtime. That's the cost for Brock Mission that we would pay to them, was about $4,800 of the $4,900. That was the shelter staffing cost. This whole notion that it was overtime, I'm not exactly sure where that's coming from. The fact that it was buried in the staff report, it was after 2 paragraphs talking about social services type activities. Yes, in the financial report, it fit in this section of the report because it was dealing with social services activities and enforcement, and the shelter strategy naturally seemed to fit in my mind under social services because that's predominantly who operates that service for us. So anyway, just some reflections from me. I appreciate the fact, Councillor, that you know, we perhaps don't need to revise all of our systems. You're really asking me to come up with some high level estimates, particularly for the salaried staff who get paid for blocks of biweekly time in terms of how they spend their time. That was really primarily my comments here earlier. It's not necessarily the public works people that are hourly that do fill out timesheets. It's the salaried staff.
Through the
you.
chair.
All right.
My point is this. If we have a pattern of events that are happening from an enforcement approach, from our municipal law enforcement, if we have a consistent pattern of enforcement strategies that are activating divisions of the city and pulling them away from their day-to-day duties, I believe that council should understand how that impacts the city. Because it's not just about the enforcement. It's about do we need to look at public works and if like, again, these are all questions that I wish would have been answered by the original motion. And that was the intent of the motion, for us to really deeply understand, A, where is this enforcement strategy coming from? Because it's not coming from the homelessness table. And what are the mechanisms in which the enforcement division is pulling in and connecting with other divisions in the city to help them with a strategy? And then look at the strategy, look at the effectiveness of it.
Okay, CAO Reyna.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. First, I just want to say that we are not, the enforcement strategy should not be discussed in the public. So, and the second thing which I want to say is that enforcement strategy is totally based on the council approved parks bylaw. So staff is just going and doing what the council has given us direction to do. So the parameters of enforcement strategy come under the council approved bylaw. And the one thing I also want to say that it's not that on Tuesday the enforcement people will think that, oh, today I have to go. It's a proper planning. It's nobody, there's a lot of coordination in this effort, and that needs a lot of stakeholders. It's not that out of the blues, one day a manager will go and say that I need 4 people, I need 5 people. There's a lot of planning there. People know what is going to coming, but we have to maintain the confidentiality of this whole procedure too.
And
Okay, thank you.
the chair,
You have 30 seconds left.
yeah, I mean, just to finish up, I think the answer is appropriate. And whether it has to be done in camera or not, I think the point of this is we give delegated authority to staff all the time to do things, but we still have the right as council to oversee how that money is being spent and how that delegated authority is being handled, right? And even to the point of the Brock Mission, you know, to the public looking at this chart on page 7, it would imply that social services staff the shelter, when we really know that social services use Brock to operate and staff the shelter. And so the point is this. The point is that I believe that we need to look at how the money is being spent on these specific enforcement strategies and weigh it with the impact of those strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. All right, moved by Councillor Burke. We'll take a vote on the deferral. And that is lost. All right, back to the main motion. Mover, Councilor Chica. Any comments or questions? Councilor Burke on the main motion?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Mr. Freeman, please. On page 8, there's a chart that is about the transfers from the contingency. And there's a section 10, which is other potential commitments. Can you please separate the cost for those two for us, please? What is the cost for the DC appeal legal fees, and what is the cost for the temporary shelter at Fire Hall number 2?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The cost, the staff estimate for the DC appeal is $50,000, and the balance actually is to the temporary shelter at fire station number 2.
So through the chair, it's around $80 for the fire station number 2. Here total.
Mr. Chairman, it's $50,000 for the estimate for the DC appeal, and it's the temporary shelter at fire station number 2 is $75,600.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Burke. Councilor Hakey.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councilor, I thought you were just moving it to move.
No,
so
no, if I may,
Yep.
just
Councilor Chica.
clarification through you, Chair Beamer. I was actually raising my hand because I had another question related to the financial report, not to move the motion. So,
Okay.
yeah, I
so-
mean, I'm happy to move the motion later, but I just wanted to explain why I had my hand up.
Perfect. Are you
Thank
okay?
you.
I just need someone to move it.
Sure, I'll move it.
Okay, so moved by
Yeah.
Councilor Chica. So I have Councilor Chica and then Councilor Hakey. Councilor Chica.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair Beamer. I had a question related to the community service lines, specifically Parks and Recreation, if I may. It's a finance question, a budget-related question, and it has to do with the fencing for Bonnerworth. There was something on our city website that the Pickleball Association was raising funds related to the enhanced fencing around the courts. And so there was a post on our website and that for the fundraising related to this added fencing, that it was the partnership between the PPA and the city of Peterborough. And it's my understanding, and just doing a little bit of digging, that the ask of the Peterborough Pickleball Association was $115,000, and they were trying to raise $40,000 to add to the $75,000 they had already raised. Some of these things, to see it on the website and to not know about this, and for a tax receipt to be issued through the city website for the Peterborough Pickleball Association was just a question, because has this been done before? I received a number of calls and emails related to this, and I just wanted to bring it forward so that we had clarity. Has this been done before? As a counselor, I remember in our debate about Bonnerworth, there was a question as to whether there were private contributors, and the answer at that time, I recall, was no, there wasn't. So this has been an evolution. As I'm trying to connect the dots, there's been an evolution that there has been an ask for the enhanced fencing for the Pickleball Association to produce that extra. So is that because we didn't, we have a shortfall, or that we were unable to cover it with the budgeting that we had for this portion of the facility? Can you just bring some clarity so that it makes sense? Thank you very much. Either Commissioner Laidman, Commissioner Friedman, or anyone else related to Parks and Rec. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I will start. Sheldon, Commissioner Laidman, I might have to get you to supplement my comments. To your question, Councillor, has it been done before? A number of times, actually, with different projects. So some that come to mind for my tenure here at the city, certainly with the Lawn Bowling Club when it was constructed on McDonald Street, the Rugby Club, particularly when the clubhouse moved to Nichols Oval, numerous trail projects actually, whereby interested individuals come forward and they want to contribute to the project. The municipality, as a municipality in the province of Ontario, we do have the authority to issue a tax receipt. We are not a charitable organization per se, but we do have that authority under the Municipal Act. Yes, it has been done numerous times. I believe in this particular circumstance, there was already fencing included in the Bonnerworth project. The city working with the Pickleball Association, and Sheldon, this is where I might have to get you to jump in here, come forward with some additional enhancements to the fencing. And there were, it's my understanding that a number of individuals have stepped forward and provided a donation towards the enhanced fencing. I do not believe that the donation or the monies are coming from the Pickleball Association per se, but rather members of or other pickleball players or other interested community members. Sheldon, I'll defer to you for any additional comments.
Through you, Chair Beamer, just to add to that. So the original plan included the base fencing that is required for a typical pickleball, and that's what the city was prepared to include in the Bonnerworth Park. The Pickleball Association has come forward with an enhanced fencing aspect that would increase the usability and viability of the park, but that wasn't in the base scope. So the Pickleball Association has decided to fundraise separately for that additional fencing beyond the base scope that the city was going to provide. To your question about the other aspects of it, not aware of any other private fundraising other than the pavilion was done through a sponsorship of Hydro One as well. And that's how that was added to the scope of the project.
Thank you. And if I may, supplemental through you, Chair Beamer. Thank you for that. So just to clarify, there have been other groups that have solicited fundraising through our city website. Is that correct? That's been done before?
If I can, for sure, that's been done during my time with at least 4 or 5 types of either organizations or projects.
Thank you. That helps to bring clarity. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chica. Councillor Hickey. Just
Hill Road.
Well, just people watching at home are going to want to hear what you have to say. Yeah, they will.
That's very kind of you. This is regarding the Tower Hill Road and Fairburn intersection project, and I'm not sure who to direct it to, but it's a simple question. In that budgeting, do we have the traffic studies required that we've been asking for Fairburn and the associated streets? I don't know who to direct that to if it goes to
Commissioner Nelson.
Commissioner Nelson.
Through the chair to Councillor Hickey. Staff are working, if you're speaking about just the project itself, staff are working through the detailed design as we speak, and those studies are ongoing. But we do have a number of the studies already in place as we work through the detailed design.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to be clear, I'm looking for something that incorporates McCrae Drive and I think Raymond as it pertains to Fairburn. Do we know if that's in there?
Through the chair, that would be outside of the scope of that current project. It doesn't necessarily bring in the full breadth of the whole piece of Fairburn Street. It mainly is looking at the intersection of Tower Hill, Lily Lake, and Fairburn Street is what that current project is speaking to.
And through you, Mr. Chair, we had this conversation before, and what I'm trying to get is when can we expect then Hillview, Fairburn, McCrae, and Raymond Street?
I think that is part of one of the subsequent studies as recommended under the Transportation Master Plan and associated with some of the development lands that are associated there. I may defer to Director Appleby on whether he has any specific timelines on that, but currently I'm not aware of any specific timelines, but I know that is work that would be coming.
Through the chair, there is an ongoing subdivision application on the lands, kind of the hole in the donut, if you will, right in the middle. And through that process, that site is looking to be designed in a way that starts to try and tie all those various roads together. Now, the developer, if they're connecting to roads, they'll be responsible for kind of the roads internal to their site. And then additional work would have to come later on as budgets allow, if there's any necessary upgrades to sort of affected streets, and the city would end up having to do that work later on.
Through you, chairs, I think the developer's MDM, am I correct, on their second phase? Okay. And this is what I'm trying to get at, is when can we expect the budget to be in place for the traffic study for that area? Now, are you saying, through you, Mr. Chair, are you saying, Mr. Appleby, that is a responsibility, or that will be the responsibility of the developer?
Through the chair, there's certain things that are the responsibility of the developer in terms of doing their own sort of traffic impact study and sorting out how their site kind of affects its surroundings as they're kind of fitting in. I think you may be thinking of something broader than what I'm talking about, which is I believe this area in the transportation master plan may have been identified as like a special study area. I would have to go back into the TMP to confirm that. And that's not what's happening here right now. The special study area would be something separate. What I'm speaking to, again, is more about the development itself, how it ties into its surroundings, and then contemplating the upgrades to some of those immediate streets affected by that development tying in.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the simple question, I guess the real question is, when can we expect, and we've been putting this off, and we've been telling, Councillor Beamer and I have been talking with the residents there. We know Fairburn needs to be upgraded, and we know that there's problems with the Raymond Street three-way there. When can we expect something that gives them the idea of when in the future there could be upgrades to the development, not necessarily McCrae hooking into the existing development, but that is a possibility, but urbanizing Fairburn down to, is it Raymond now, I think is where the urbanization stops. That's really what I'm asking. And you can send me an email afterwards, but I'd like to be able to tell the residents something. Thank you.
And even if you could get us that information in an email, if you don't know it off the top here, because I know it's a little bit off the scope of the financial report right now. Commissioner?
Through the chair, I do believe that would, because right now there isn't specific updates short of the special study area that Director Appleby spoke to. There isn't at this point firm recommendations for upgrades on those corridors. So it would be looked at as part of future development plans in the associated area, and or future updates to the TMP that would dictate possibly timelines and or recommendations to those upgrades. So unfortunately, there's nothing right now that's written concrete in terms of recommendations to those upgrades unless it falls out of those special study areas and recommendations that come from that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize because we're in the exact same position we were in when I started.
That's all right. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burke, a second time, then we'll try to take a vote.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. Through you to Commissioner Laidman. I'm just picking up on some of the conversation from one of the previous speakers, and you mentioned that the shade structure at Bonnerworth was funded through a sponsorship. Can you tell us how that happened? Because I went to the public meeting for Bonnerworth. I've been to APRAC meetings where plans were presented. I'm currently the co-chair of Parks and Rec, and to me, that shade structure was always a part of the city's plan as one of the features of the park. Why has that been taken out of the budget that I just went over, that I've seen, the plans that I've seen? What was the rationale for moving that to a sponsorship type situation?
Through you, Chair Beamer, I may have to get back to the counselor in more detail, but I can say at a high level, when the project was fully RFP'd and tendered, the cost to make sure we stayed within the city's budget, there needed to be certain features and aspects that we had to reduce to stay within the council's approved budget. However, when an opportunity arose with a private sponsorship, we took that opportunity to add that feature back in to the project. So it was always part of the project, but it was an aspect that had to be reduced to be able to fit within the council approved budget. But now it's been able to add back in now that we have additional revenues.
And through the chair, finally, to CAO Reyna, back to the enforcement side of this report. I think you mentioned that there were specifics about the enforcement approach that needed to be discussed and closed. Do you think as a sort of consolation to the information that was given to us in this public report, as part of the original motion, council could receive a report in camera with some of the details that weren't able to be in this report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will say yes. We will discuss in the SLT and most likely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Chica. We'll take a vote on the recommendations. And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. 12B, site alteration implementation bylaw. Councilor Hakey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Nelson. There's been some emails and some letters that have gone back and forth, and I've learned a few things. And I just want to ask, my understanding is that currently we do not have a site alteration bylaw. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, and why don't we have one? My understanding, again, limited, is that majority of municipalities do have one.
Through the chair, that is correct. It's
Go ahead.
somewhat of a just an issue of time and resources in order to get to it, and it's an item that basically if we're not the last, we're definitely one of the last in the Southern Ontario area to implement such a bylaw.
And through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Nelson, will we have something come forward to council in the near future regarding this?
Through the chair, in terms of the bylaw, or
specific bylaw addressing that?
So the report that's on the table tonight in front of you is that specific bylaw.
Okay. Through you again, Mr. Chair, the concerns that Trent has is that this can delay them. Now, reading the report, I think it's to cover off any unforeseen issues that crop up. Am I correct?
Through the chair.
Or could you go into a bit more detail for all of us, please?
Yeah, so the intent of the site alteration bylaw is that it's, in some cases in the past, we've been reactionary, and ultimately the city has a limited role to play, even though that the city ends up usually fronting a lot of that, the calls, the responsibility, and sometimes even the deferral of the responsibility onto the city, in that if there is deleterious material that is being released off of a site into basically a natural area, and it's the city's storm sewer or any of the city's pipe that is transporting that, then typically the city is held responsible for such. Which, if that's the case, the city is tasked for that, but the city has very limited in terms of corrective actions to be able to hold the property owner responsible for those issues. So this is what the site alteration bylaw will give us some ability to do that. It also aids the city in helping be more proactive and allowing property owners maybe to move ahead of and do some of that early grading and that ahead of a site plan development, Because if they go through the process of getting a site alteration permit, then they have the ability to move forward ahead of argumentatively their full approvals through site plan, because then they can move forward with some of that site alteration work. Whereas right now they're doing that ahead of the fact, and ultimately the city has very limited, if no, ability to oversee that or basically get involved, even though we would be the first party typically that people would call to say there's a problem that's happening with this site.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple comments. I move this report, Mr. Chair. I have no doubt in my mind that Trent University wants to operate by everything environmentally appropriate for the site, but accidents do happen. My other concern, though, is if Trent gets a waiver on this, what's to prevent Sir Sanford, what's to prevent a major developer from asking for the same? And I don't know if that's a concern that staff has, but it's something that I have. If the intent of this is not only to monitor, but be able to correct something, I'm fully supportive of it, and I suspect Trent is too. I don't think for a minute that they're trying to pull a fast one, do anything. They don't want to be held up, and I get that. So if we advance them before site plan, if we advance them the ability to grade the site, I think it's reasonable that we have an expectation that if something does go wrong, and I think we've all seen the black plastic on stakes as protecting different areas, whether it's water runoff or not. But those are my comments. But the biggest one is, my concern is who else could come back to us and say, hey, you didn't hold them to the same standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hickey. Moved by Councillor Hickey. I have Councillor Burke, Mayor Leal, Councillor DeGay. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. Through you, I just have one question for Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner, why is the per hectare fee capped at $20,000? Could this limit cost recovery for larger scale developments?
So through the chair, I'll start on basically defer to Director Boland or Manager May as part of a supplementary, but it's basically from a perspective of trying to keep it fair and reasonable for costs, and from a perspective of ensuring the cost levels are covered. And that's sort of a plateau area, is my understanding of where we meet those levels. So as I say, I'll defer to Director Boland if he has anything further to supplement on that.
Yeah, through the chair, I think Commissioner Nelson covered it off. It's essentially a cap that keeps us in line with, what other, nearby municipalities are charging, and also is in line with the time spent on a file, potentially a larger file. So up to a certain amount, you're not spending, exorbitant amount more time on a file. So there's just a certain amount when it's that big. So determined that the $20,000 cap was reasonable. So.
And through the chair, but could it limit our cost recovery on this if we do get a large project?
Through the chair, it could, but we then fall in the neighborhood of people accusing us of just seeking cash recoveries and not necessarily needing it for the purposes of performing the task that is intended at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Mayor Leal.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And one of the reasons why I think this is a very important recommendation, because it prevents premature dredging of detention ponds. When detention ponds are set up, they're based on site plans. They're based on flows from site plans. So if site plans get altered, new sediments are draining off these sites. They get into a detention pond. The detention pond no longer functions. So in order to have a critical flood control measure, you need your detention ponds to fully function all the time. So this recommendation will prevent that very expensive premature dredging of detention ponds in the city of Peterborough.
Thank you very much, Mayor Leo. Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. My question, if I might, Mr. Chairman, is to Mr. Boland. Mr. Boland, I do recall in a earlier presentation, I believe to council, you provided a map, sir, that in response to Councillor Hickey's query, you provided a map that showed all the communities around Peterborough, all of them. I think it went as far as Kingston and to Oshawa. All those communities have today site alteration bylaws, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. Some form of a site alteration bylaw, fill bylaw, they give it different names depending on where you are, but yes, that's true. Yeah.
Then I have, if I might, and I would say, Mr. Chairman, I do support the recommended bylaw. Like Councillor Hickey, I did receive correspondence from Trent University, which I've considered in its totality and considered comprehensively. One supplemental question then to Mr. Boland. Mr. Boland, with this site alteration bylaw, would it be applied to a homeowner in a new subdivision, which is already subject to a grading and drainage, a master plan, an individual? Would it apply to them if they were to proceed to install an in-ground pool and associated landscaping in their rear yard of their property?
Through the chair to Councillor Duguay. So in newer subdivisions, they'd still be subject to the subdivision agreements and certain provisions that are already tied to those new lots, which would, already be restricting what they can do on a property. Also, there's provisions in our permits for smaller lots, like you obviously are allowed to go ahead and, put in your raised gardens and things and install a hot tub, whatever you need to do, where you wouldn't need a permit or anything like that. So in most newer subdivisions, no, the site alteration bylaw wouldn't apply. Where to get a permit, where it would apply is if you end up interfering with drainage or causing an issue or sediment is releasing off your property, then the provisions of the bylaw could apply to those older lots. But generally in newer subdivisions, you have existing, rules in place. So,
Mr. Chairman, a final query then in that regard, because there have been complaints filed to councillors in the past about the installation of in-ground pools in developed areas that are covered by, I'll call it a dated subdivision agreement, which never contemplated such installations. And moreover, those same subdivisions have topographical challenges. So property 1 is higher than property 2, and in-ground pools installed in property B now receives all the water. But would property A, under this bylaw, if the pool installer were to contemplate an in-ground pool, because it is a disruption, it changes, will that property owner be required to, will they be captured by this and would be subject to a site alteration permit, if I may call it that?
Through the chair, yes, they would. In that kind of an instance, they would. Be a simple process just to make sure they're not causing an issue to their neighbor.
That regard, Mr. Chairman, my final comment in that regard, this is important because there have been several examples of where this has occurred and the city's caught, and we haven't been able to do anything. And the inappropriate drainage and activities was clearly associated with an installation. I'm not suggesting installation or the installers are at fault, but I'm happy to hear that will be covered. And I do support the bylaw as written in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duguay. Second time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just one further question to Mr. Boland. Something that happens from time to time are people that fill in swales. Would that also apply to them? I visited homes where swales have been filled in and people put evergreen trees in the swale.
Through the chair, yes. So if someone did go ahead and do something like that, there are, enforcement mechanisms within the bylaw which would allow us to go in and make sure those actions are corrected.
And like Councillor Duguay, then the neighbor gets flooded and they wonder why the neighbor gets flooded after you fill in a swale. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Leo. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Hickey, will take a vote. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. 12C, Affordable Rental Housing Subclass Information Report. Councillor Reel.
Chair, to Mr. Laidman, I want to thank you first for answering the 16 or 15 questions you got. It answered a lot of mine. The question is why in 2027 would we even entertain this? I'm going to go back. There's probably half of us on council here that we were sold a bill of goods by the Peterborough Chamber of Commerce that if we were to give a break to the commercial and industrial property owners, that it would stymie or it would stimulate growth. And I said at that time that it's a download on the taxpayers to make up the difference. So a year ago, we sent a letter to the government asking to rescind that. And we got a nice reply, thanks, but no thanks. So I guess my question is, and when I'm reading through this here, this is the same thing. It looks like a tax break to the landlord. I mean, if there was two caveats here that the money from the tax break would either go to fix up their properties or give the renters a break in their rent, I might buy into it. But why would we even entertain this in 2027? Just a brief example I give you, because this is a download again on the taxpayers of City of Peterborough to make up the shortfall.
Through you, Chair Beamer. I think your comments, Councillor Rial, are very correct that one of the largest impacts will be the redistribution of between tax classes. And staff were taking the assumption that because it was new legislation, council would want a full report as to the impacts. But certainly, if council did not want staff to proceed, we would take that direction tonight as well to not do that additional work, which will be substantial to be able to analyze this, fully for sure.
The Chair, I think I'll move the report, but I'm going to be interested in what comes back to us, because just a little bit of information I give you here, because this is a download on the taxpayers to make up the difference. Plain and simple. We've gone it through before. We're eating it right now on the commercial and industrial side. Here again, it's going to be another download. I don't think the taxpayers will really going to like it. So information is great. So I will move the report.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Rial. I have Councillor Burke and then Mayor Leal. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. Through you to Commissioner Laidman. Sheldon, thank you for answering the 15 questions that I sent and within 24 hours. And I really appreciate the way that you answered. It was the perfect amount of information for me, and I appreciate that. I just want to look at the Peterborough Housing Corp for a second, because they would stand to benefit greatly from a tax break like this that's being considered. Is it correct that Peterborough Housing Corp is one of the only housing corps in the broader, I forget, it's like L something, there's a broader group of housing corporations that they're a part of? And is Peterborough Housing Corp one of the only housing corps that actually pay property tax? I believe what I remember is they were one of only two.
Through you, Chair Beamer, that's correct. The Peterborough Housing Corp is one of, I believe, 9 local housing corporations is the acronym you were looking for, that are similar to PHC, where they're wholly owned corporations by the municipality, but they're operated separately as a separate organization. So it is true that I don't know the exact number, but the vast majority of them are already on a process of that they do not tax their LHC properties. That is correct.
Thanks. And through the Chair Beamer to you, you sit on the Peterborough Housing Corp board with us, and would implementing something like this be meaningful for Peterborough Housing Corp? Would it allow them, at least on their side of the budget, to have some more room to work with for some of the projects that they want to do and some of the reoccurring costs that are part of what they have to deal with?
Through you, Chair Beamer. So I think there's 2 answers to that question. The discrete answer to that question is the Peterborough Housing Corp budget. Yes, it would be beneficial because their tax bill would not be as high. However, the city is the wholly owns that corporation. So any less taxation coming to the city provides a subsidy back to Peterborough Housing Corporation. So any subsidy would be a wash to the city of Peterborough overall, in my belief. Now, there could be some nuance to that, and that's why staff have mentioned it in the report that we will look at that issue. But from a basic perspective, any taxation break to PHC just means less revenue to the city overall, which we would reflect in the subsidy back to Peterborough Housing Corporation is my assumption.
Okay, thank you. And then through the chair, why are staff recommending that delaying action until 2026, which means that the adoption wouldn't take place until 2027, instead of exploring passing a bylaw before the September 30th, 2025 deadline?
Through you, Chair Beamer, essentially the timing was such that it was not possible for staff to do a comprehensive review of all the items that I think council was deserving of to be able to make a proper decision on this in terms of the impact on each tax classification, impacts on PHC, impacts on the affordable housing properties themselves. And there weren't other examples to go by either, because this is a new legislation and we don't have other examples to go by in such a quick time frame. So we felt that the best thing to do is to not be able to implement for the first year, but to commit to be able to review it properly for next year. And that's what we found when we've surveyed other service managers, is there's only a handful that have adopted any bylaw, and most are putting it towards their tax policy as a next step.
Okay, Councilor Burke, your second 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you through you, Chair Beamer, to Commissioner Laidman. If this subclass is adopted, are there any safeguards or reporting mechanisms that the city could put in place to ensure that this tool supports affordability outcomes, not just balance sheets?
Through you, Chair Beamer, I think that's a valid concern, and one of the things we would explore in the next review. Our basic analysis of the regulation, though, is that there would be no mechanism for the city to ensure that. It would just be simply a tax reduction to that particular property owner, and there would be no way for another agreement or something to be attached to it to ensure that it went towards a certain type of affordability, or the tenants as well.
Thank you. And finally, Chair Beamer, through you, I guess to CA Orena, since these regulations have come without provincial funding, what advocacy is staff recommending to push for senior government cost sharing instead of downloading the cost onto the local taxpayers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, since this is totally brand new, so we don't know what are these things. So what we will do, our government relation manager will get in touch with other municipalities. We'll do some benchmarking and then we will develop. So definitely there needs to be an advocacy on this. So we'll work on that.
Sorry, one final thing. I know I said final before. So I understand that this is all fresh, but has staff analyzed at all whether or not that adopting this subclass, we could use it, or the housing providers could use it to leverage or complement other federal or provincial programs, CMHC funding, Housing Accelerator Fund, or HPP?
Through you, Chair Beamer. So at this point in our cursory review of it, and I will not say that we've checked every single type of program at this point, there does not seem to be an indication that any other funding is at risk by council not adopting this. However, I would say, though, that from a good faith perspective, that the provincial government often looks to see that we have considered all regulations and things that the province puts out. And I think that would be a benefit of doing a comprehensive report for council. So at least the provincial government would be indicated that we've done a review of the possibility.
Beamer, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. I have Mayor Leal, Councillor LaChica, and Parnell. Mayor Leal.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I mean, I share with Councillor Real. I mean, we'll support the recommendation. But shifting tax ratios is an interesting game, because we all know if you start shifting tax ratios, somebody has got to bear the burden. I mean, somebody has to, because you need the same level of dollars to run a municipality. It's just a matter how the pie is divided up and who pays for what. I remember prior to the 2022 municipal election, I looked very closely at the decision that was made. I'm not here to relitigate the decision, but we shifted about $4 million from the commercial industrial side to the residential side. It gave Peterborough one of the lowest commercial industrial rates in the province of Ontario. But surprise to no one, when you look at the chart of industrial commercial ratios of the province of Ontario, some of the communities in Ontario with the highest rates also had the fastest rates of growth. So that tells me that that policy doesn't reap the dividends that was anticipated when it was brought in. I happen to think, well, we'll get the information that's contained here, but just yesterday I got a copy through his office from the Prime Minister of Canada. He announced the Build Canada Homes project yesterday, the initiative. And part of that, it will focus primarily on non-market housing, supportive housing, a mix of income needs as part of the national effort to double housing construction, restore affordability, and reduce homelessness. But particularly what will be of interest to us, there is the Build Canada Homes will deploy $1 billion to build transitional and supportive housing for people that are at homeless or at risk of being homeless. It will cooperate and collaborate with key provincial, territorial, municipal, and Indigenous partners to pair these federal investments with employment and healthcare supports. The CAO and I had a very good discussion this morning because there are 6 sites that are going to be the focus of Build Canada: Dartmouth, Longueuil, Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Edmonton. And the CAO thinks that we should get Peterborough on the second tranche of communities. So that's where I believe we need to focus our efforts to get Peterborough on that next tranche to take advantage of the Build Canada Homes. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Little. Councillor Chica.
Thanks very much, Chair Beamer. Through you, I was just going to raise that Build Canada Homes. Reading the Globe today, the announcement that just came out yesterday, it is exciting. And my question through you, Chair, to our government relations was, will we lobby for being after the 6 cities, one of the next phase of cities? So thank you, Mayor Little, for raising it. I think that it's hopeful to hear that there's federal engagement for this affordability crisis. So I had a question, and I believe I was on the speakers list, so I'll continue. To Commissioner Laidman, thank you for your answers to those questions, because I had some similar ones today. I wondered if there was an opportunity, since the legislation was introduced in May, was there an opportunity at AMO to often, because there are sessions related to new legislation, was there anything that you took in or was available to you to find out about other municipalities related to this subclass legislation? Was there anything that you noted through presentations that were there or through any conversations? Just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, through you, Chair Beamer. I don't believe we were aware at that exact moment of this legislation and the depth of it, so we did not discuss it at AMO or hear discussion about it at all.
Thank you. And just supplemental, one more thought. Can you at all enlighten when it might be possible for us to restart some of the stalled housing projects like Alexander Street? What will it take, and when would you foresee we could bring that back into our budgeting discussions and enable those things to happen going forward? Thank you.
Through you, Chair Beamer. I think there's 2. So the first one is 1190 Hilliard Street, which Council has reviewed, and Council has included in its budget to bring it to full shovel ready, which Council made the commitment to do so. And the direction being that staff be directed to seek out senior government funding. So if there's one of these new programs that comes available, was one of our delegations at AMO to the minister directly on that issue, is that we have a $17 million funding gap on 1190 Hilliard, and that's what we need from senior government to make that project come to fruition. So I don't believe there's anything Council needs to do right now. Council's made the commitment to bring it to shovel ready, and that financial commitment. It's simply now waiting for the appropriate senior government program to come available for that project. Same with Sherbrooke Street. Alexander Court. is in kind of the next phase of development. Council's approved us going forward with the initial phasing of that and plan development. That would come to council for bringing it to the final step of shovel ready. We would expect sometime in 2026.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair Beamer, to the Peterborough Housing team that takes part in those meetings regularly, and to Commissioner Laidman, thank you very much, because it's an unfolding time and there's a lot of detail to pay attention to. And certainly it's a part of our strategic plan, and you apply yourself so diligently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chica. Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also caution that this is not a bandwagon that we want to jump onto quickly, because there is a significant cost to the municipality. Therefore, a new class or an existing different class of taxpayers within the city. This is very much like the legislation that the province brought in to say, hey, municipalities, you may no longer charge development charges on certain classes of affordable housing or long-term care. You can't. Yet we still must provide the infrastructure for that very necessary housing. So who's going to pay for that? Because they did not, as was once said, make us whole with that funding. And here's another piece of legislation that's coming to us for consideration, but very clearly right up front says no provincial money for this. The municipality must absorb it. And we know changing tax classes, putting the burden on another one that's already been overloaded is just not the responsible thing to do these days. So should we do our due diligence to, to keep show the province that we've done our due diligence? Yes, but you have to think long and hard about moving tax classes, as we've all learned. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Purnell. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Reel. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. 12D, Youth Transit Pass Program, Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did, through you, have a couple of questions for staff. As someone who brought this to council on behalf of the Youth Commission at the time, and council approved us establishing this as of September 25, I can tell you that I am very personally disappointed that we haven't met that timeline, but many students and parents also are disappointed. I do understand that there are reasons for that, and I would like to respectfully ask the commissioner if he could explain to us the challenges of meeting that September 2025 deadline. I think it's important for people to understand. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly. So with this direction from council, we began to investigate what the opportunities were, what the options were, as well as what other municipalities have implemented over the various programs that are available. I can tell you our initial intention was to bring a report to council in June for implementation in September. However, as we started the consultation process, and particularly with an individual who was very instrumental in implementing the Kingston program, as well as a number of other programs in the province, really understanding how much effort needed to be brought forward. And we continue to work through that process. I do unfortunately hear the concerns of the council and recognize that the intent to deliver in September was brought seriously. However, with regards to where we are, the report that you have in front of you actually has a very robust plan, and the consultation that we have done to date has been very helpful in clarifying what our intention is with the program, in supporting youth and educating youth as they transition to public transit, and also hopefully leading to growth in our transit ridership going forward. So I'm hopeful that the plan is in front of you is robust enough to allow this council to support it and to allow us to move forward.
Okay, thank you. And further to that, I think it's also important that people realize that we definitely are proceeding with this, and part of the plan is, well, school buses will remain as there are, and I will ask the commissioner to elaborate, but we will be providing free youth transit all summer long, as well as weekends and after school. So all of our goals about increasing youth ridership being able to go to school on the school bus to school, but be able to stay after school for activities and bring transit home. That will come to pass, and we will get there. But there is an implementation plan to that. There's a huge education piece to that because riding in a school bus is much different than riding in a transit bus. And also, if you could elaborate on those points, Commissioner, as well as how can students today, this school year, obtain passes if they need them and qualify? Thank you.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So with regards to the program, definitely with the school system that's in place now, the intention is to maintain the Elebus school services that's funded for and delivered by the school boards in the province. Our program here is to augment that system initially and also work with our school bus provider to look at opportunities to increase availability of the public transit system. The intention is to bring free passes to students, and we'll be starting with the initial rollout in early spring with the 13 and 14-year-old students. And that will provide a pass that, as the counselor mentioned, would allow for full-time access to the buses anytime when schools are not in session. So essentially vacation times, holiday times, summer holidays, weekends. And this will allow students to access the community free of charge as part of their education and engagement with transit, allowing them to get to different events, work, and other social activities that they may be able to use transit for. I think it's also important to recognize that part of this program was described as a free youth program. And there is an element of the program existing right now where a number of passes are purchased both by the busing company and the school boards that they then manage through their own internal criteria to ensure that all students have appropriate access and appropriate transportation to their area schools. This allows us to provide those passes at a charge to the school board, which are then provided to the students free of charge. And it allows us to do that without having to make the decision on which student will get a free pass or not. That's the responsibility of the school board. That's the responsibility of the schools. And between the schools and the busing system, they make those decisions. And that program is working well, and that will continue, and that is available today to students and families who may have concerns with their children's access to transportation. Also, with regards to, there was a cost, it may not have been asked, but part of this is a costing element, and there has been concern, or there has been comment around how this may impact our revenue stream. It's a relatively small student body that we're accessing, and it's also intended to generate future fares. So this program isn't a 1 or 2 or 3 year program. The first year, by the end of the summer, by the beginning of the 2026 school year, all students will have passes that are looking for a pass, and that'll be done through this distribution program through our staff programs that are outlined in the report. And for every year subsequent to that, and new students coming into the system will be provided passes. The intention over the next 5 to 10 years, as these students transition out of high school into other modes of transportation, other modes of engagement in our community, that we retain some of them as transit riders. And it's a long-term program intended to educate and meet our long-term corporate goals around greenhouse gas reductions, ridership split, our mode splits, and ensuring that we have transportation systems being utilized, and also allowing students right now to access our systems when there is lower demand on the systems. And I hope I have touched on all the points that may have been asked.
Would you like your second 5 minutes?
No, I'll
You sure?
conclude. I'm happy to move it, and I thank the commissioner for the explanation. I guess the main point is that students can access transit they need now, and the new system will be more comprehensive with education. And it is coming, and I thank staff for their work on it, and we look forward to the full implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purnell. Thank you very much, Commissioner. I have Councillor Hakey Burke LaChica. Councillor Hakey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and through you to Commissioner Simonovsky. You touched on it a bit, Ilmar. Do we have any idea of what the population is of this group when it's fully implemented?
We do, and I believe it's around 10,000 students. I want to also just check, there's a couple of elements to this. And one of the things that's important to recognize is that with the student population, the number of rides is also a piece of it. I do know, just on the statistics that we have, that it's, I think, less than 3% of our total ridership. So I can actually confirm the actual number of students that may be eligible for the program. Unless Barry is also here tonight, unless he has a number at the top of his head, but we can definitely bring that back to this committee.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you can make one up and I believe it, but I think 10,000 is pretty accurate. So thank you for that. On page 54, you talk about 12% mode share target by, and I forget the date, but where are we at right now with busing? Is it at 3% of the population? Is it at 2%? I'm not talking youth, I'm talking the total current percentage. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I don't actually have that information on hand. Again, happy to bring that forward as a separate memo.
You can just email it to me. That would be appreciated. And then I can do the math with the 3% with the kid bump up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. To Commissioner Simonovsky, thanks. I really appreciate, I'm going to be voting in support of this. I just have a few questions, and I believe that you answered them in a way, but I just want to push a little bit because most of the youth that I talk to that are interested in accessing transit are actually wanting to have it during the day. So would it not be more simpler to just have them get a regular pass where they could access transit 24/7? I know when I was in high school for a minute, we had long lunch periods. We had spares where we would go. Our high school was downtown, so we could walk. It's not like that anymore. And a lot of kids that I talk to are looking for transportation options during the day while they're at school, right? And so I want to know why that sort of simpler, all-encompassing pass couldn't just be given to them. And yeah, and so I'm just I'm wondering about that. And I've received, as a counselor who holds a social services file, I do receive regular emails from, I want to say, low-income families where the proximity of their children's high school and their personal situation is an issue, where they don't fit into the current bus system. In some cases, they have to be driven a significant amount to catch the bus, and it's very problematic. And they reach out to me thinking that there's some sort of magic solution from social services. And these are regular things I get, and it's from parents asking me and asking the city, how can our kids access transit to get to school? And I know you explained the ways in which the school board is doing that, but I'm wondering why it just can't be given like a straight up pass.
Mr. Chair, this is a great question, and it does relate to the amount of research that we're doing early on in the process and recognizing how many permutations, combinations were actually being used. What I would like to say with regards to this program, and it's considered a pilot, we've written it up as a pilot. The intention once we go live with this is to also look at how the uptake happens with the school boards, with the students that are given passes, how we can work with the busing company to better improve coordination across our system and the busing system, and move into a growth phase where we're trying to better integrate the services. And your suggestion, I think, makes perfect sense, because one of the issues or risks that we felt might be, definitely unknown from our perspective, is if we go to a full-on free pass, what happens to the yellow bus program, and where would that funding go if all of a sudden the yellow buses are, say, half capacity? So either we look at how we can work with the busing company to make transitions, maybe test that approach where it's an all-day free pass. It makes sense. Once they're in school, they're in school. There was a risk that we were just a little sensitive to around where our partners would be with regards to the existing busing program and how that would overlap.
Thanks. Final question, Chair Beamer, to the Commissioner, is that, I know consultation is one of the foundations of our strategic plan. And can you tell us how staff consulted with youth on building this program?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. This is part of the delay, and the intention of what we've brought forward here is to ensure that we have full consultation. We have many committees that are in the city, both with regards to internal operations, our transit committee that needs to be consulted. We have the school board. So really, the biggest fear that I had with bringing this forward too quickly was not doing that consultation fully enough. And I think it's important to recognize as well, a big piece is the education piece. And with education, we really want to hear from the community, from the future riders of the service as to how they want to use the service so that we can actually craft a program that's going to meet their needs and also bring that sense of them being heard in the process of creating it for the youth.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Lachika.
Thank you very much, Chair Beamer. Through you to Commissioner Simonovskis, I just wanted to say, just express appreciation for the tremendous amount of work that is involved in getting this right, and to distribute this to such a large number of students is a big task. So thank you and your team for doing this. And ultimately, we're going to really see our next generation of transit riders be nurtured through this program. I think it will tip the balance significantly in our ridership to really decrease our local GHG emissions too as we move forward. So thank you for that. One question I have, and related to what Councillor Burke raised about the times, I'm wondering if during evenings, whether that could mean from dismissal forward. You know, being a parent to a teenager, I know often, and if she's a yellow bus user, the issue is being at school and needing to get to Lansdowne Place or something like that, and the yellow bus won't take them there. I think that would be a significant piece if it was from dismissal forwards, if that sort of evening after school aspect could be thought about. I think that's a big one if you were to ask parents and kids. That's often what their obstacle is. Thank you very much, and happy just to support this new incentive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lachika, for that. Councillor DeGay and then Vassiliadis. Councillor DeGay.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. I'm not sure if this is to Commissioner Simonovskis or Mr. Wakeford, if he's here. I've read the report, and I'm sorry, I've certainly considered the initiative previously, and I'm in full support of finding ways to have youth utilize our transit system. I've also expressed concerns in these chambers about the duplication of a yellow bus service going right by this high school, and our transit route is the same. It's the same route. So it's important that we find some strategies to allow our youth to be able to use buses. Now, I've read the report and I have one question. How will we accommodate students with physical disabilities? In other words, they require specialized transportation. Is that going to be part of the ongoing strategy? Because I may have missed it, but I don't recall seeing it in earlier reports, and I don't recall, so I've read this report again, I don't recall seeing it. Is that a matter that will still be considered and need to be addressed?
Through Mr. Chairman, looking at Mr. Wakeford, and I think maybe that's something we'll bring back and include as a consideration. Yeah, I guess right now it would be calling special services to ensure that their transport is safely accommodated, and that may already be happening with regards to students that are not using, say, the standard yellow bus services.
So if I can, within these chambers, so let's imagine it's the young student at Kenner who is able-bodied and gets the transit, but the student who has a physical disability had to require specialized transit. They should also be subject to a free service. So it's something we need to contemplate. I realize there's a lot of logistics involved here and about eligibility and making it work, but I would be particularly excited to see that prospect come to fruition, because that will help. That could help a lot. There may or may not already be eligible for some subsidy support, Mr. Chairman, but let's imagine if that's paid out of pocket. Let's imagine we can find a way to make, and I know it's a cost to the taxpayers, but we're going to have to consider that it's for all students, able-bodied and those that are not able-bodied. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor DeGay. I have Councillor Vassiliadis and then Parnell a second time. Councillor Vassiliadis.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I'd say a few words as co-chair of municipal operations, along with what I share this portfolio with Councillor Real, and I appreciate this being brought forward. This is something that we can push forward as one of the initiatives for our transportation master plan and try to meet some of the targets, because some of the targets I'm not sure if we're ever going to meet, but I think you have to try, and this is one of those situations where we're trying. And I think that we have to look at it this way, in a way too, that if we're looking at 10,000 people or extra riders, that's great. I know we're giving this in a sense as a free service, but when you look in the Ontario gas tax rebate, the higher the ridership, the higher the check we get from the Ontario government. So that's just that's an added bonus, and it does say that in the actual report. But I'm encouraged too, and I think we've already talked about it, that it says in the report, fall 2025, school board, student transportation services, and youth organizations will be engaged. So we are going to go through that process, but I just wanted to thank Commissioner Simonauskas on the work and the thoughtfulness that you've done to piece this together, and not just kind of say, here you go, here's your passes, and there's a reasoning, and I know you like your numbers, and I appreciate that too, and I know a number that I always want to know too is what Councillor Hakey was asking, what's the percentage of our permanent population that take the bus. So this should hopefully increase that, I would hope. And because that's always a number I ask for too on a regular basis. It shows you how healthy your transit system is. So but I just want to thank you for all your work on it, and look forward to when this is finally coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Vassiliadis. Councillor Purnell, second time.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick points through you, Mr. Chair. So definitely the intention is the free transit for youth would start at after regular school hours. That provides the flexibility for students to stay for after school sports, programming, arts, whatever, and then get safely home on transit. So that's really important as to free transit during school hours. Stay in school, do your studies, go home after school hours. But that's just a comment. The important thing to mention already, just to put it out there once again, anybody up to age 12 already has access to free transit in our system. So parents or caregivers trying to navigate the system with kids up to 12, it is already free and has been for some time. So teach your kids early. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purnell. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Purnell, take a vote. And that is carried. 12E, approval to replace specialized work truck. Councillor Lachika.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair Beamer. Again, to Commissioner Simonauskas, thank you for this report. It was great to read through and get to the climate change portion, where indeed you have shared that without a vehicle that has this option through alternative fuels, that's why we're not able to. So appreciate you stating that. I don't know if you can go into any specifics in terms of what that research was like. I'm sure the climate action staff, James, probably helped out too. It's surprising that there wouldn't be a truck, a flatbed that did this necessary work that didn't have an alternative fuel. In the time of cyber trucks and everything else, you would think that they would have come up with something. Can you share a little bit more with us about that endeavor?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, and Ian's left. Our climate committee is not here. Basically, the issues around different fuel options, besides the power requirements and the longevity of the particular fuel during its operation, there's also the infrastructure needed to support that, whether it's a natural gas or electrification or whatever that alternate fuel source may be. And the vehicles just aren't quite available yet. There are options that may provide some benefit, and we do provide those vehicles such as the bylaw vehicles or the smaller, more commuter type vehicles. I do know that as part of the report that's coming forward with regards to alternate fuels, transit is a big area where we may have opportunities. Again, it's not just the fuel, it's the whole infrastructure needed to actually support that fueling system. It has to happen. It's just not on this report, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to move the report as well, Chair Beamer, if that's okay.
Thank you, thank you. Moved by Councillor LaChica. Mayor Lil.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a question through to Commissioner Szymanowski. Commissioner, I wonder if information might be available down the road. In the province of Quebec, they had an all-electric bus that blew up. We've all seen pictures of the burning Hulk sitting on the side of the road. They took the complete fleet off all roads in Quebec. I'm just wondering if there'd be an opportunity to perhaps glean some information from that experience and indeed what happened is if we continue to look at bringing in electric vehicles to replace a diesel or gasoline.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, concerning as I do drive an electric vehicle myself, and I do recognize that there are some risks. However, it's definitely something that is emerging, and it's worth investigating both the positives and negatives of these programs, as the costs with a larger fleet can be substantial when things don't go as planned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Lil. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Chair. I drive an EV as well, and so far so good. So, with the through you, Chair, to Commissioner Szymanowski, what happens with the old vehicle? Are we going to continue to use it until it doesn't run anymore, and then we out to pasture, or do we get the new truck and sell the old one, or what's the process?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm hoping that will bring additional information through to council on some of our fleet management practices. Typically, the vehicles are evaluated for their condition and market value, post-use market value. There is no real intent to keep a used vehicle because the cost of maintaining those vehicles just escalates. So the most effective approach is to replace it with a new vehicle and discharge the vehicle for whatever value you can get on the open market. And there is a process for that in our procurement bylaw. Also, ideally, and this vehicle, as an example, coming with the water system that we just assumed in April, would have been something that should have been replaced as part of the PUC plan. However, because we don't have the approvals in place in our system, this is why we're seeing this report here. So going forward, this will be more part of the overall fleet replacement strategy and done as part of our overall management plan.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor LaChica. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. 12F, Delegated Authority for Municipally Funded Rent Supplements Agreements. Councillor Real.
Through the chair to Mr. Laidman, I'm going to move the report. But to me, this is kind of a catch-22 situation here. You have landlords selling off their holdings, chasing the buck, and putting people out in the street that are either on ODSP, Ontario Works, or low income. When we give a rent supplement, are these places inspected? That they're inhabitable by the people? Because I know when I'm out campaigning or visiting people that might be low income or Ontario Works or ODSP, some of these places you wouldn't put a dog in. So if we're giving a rent supplement out, are we inspecting these places that they're certainly inhabitable for the people that we're going to put them in?
Through you, Chair Beamer, I know Ms. Morgan Quinn's on the line. If I could just see if she would be able to answer that question for Councillor Riel. Rebecca.
Ms. Morgan Quinn, welcome.
Thank you. Through the chair, it is not practice to inspect units for tenants who are moving into rental units. We are often providing a rent supplement to someone who's already in a situation, and we're helping make that unit more affordable for them to prevent them from becoming homeless. it had been a practice where there were long-standing agreements with landlords to do unit inspections. But that's a different model than the current model that we're using. We have a lot of movement within the rent supplement programs. As well, we have the Canada Ontario Housing Benefit, which pays tenants directly, and they have a great deal of latitude as far as where they choose to rent. So no, it's not a practice at this time.
The chair to Ms. Quinn, is that something that can be looked at? I know with Peterborough Housing Corp, we inspect our properties, and certainly I don't see any reason why, if it's through social services or whatever, even some of the agencies that are providing housing, why wouldn't this stock of housing be inspected? That they're certainly up to the standard of somebody that's inhabitable for the people. I mean, again, I'm going to reiterate, I've when I'm out campaigning or when I'm invited and I see some of these places that are people living in, I mean, some of them are in pretty horrible shape, but I know that there's landlords that are kind of at the mercy of them. So there's any way of going back and revisiting this here that we're going to have an inspection program?
Through the chair, I would suspect that there'd be a substantial cost to that that isn't included in our budget currently.
But at that.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Hill, we'll take a vote. Excuse me, we'll take a vote. And that is carried. 12G, recycling non-eligible sources. Councillor Burke.
Didn't realize I was first up. Thank you, Chair Beamer. My question through you to, I guess it would be Commissioner Simonovsky. Sorry, I'll start with the question for Daryl Julot, please. Daryl, what is the anticipated impact on downtown businesses that you talked to if collection convenience and reliability are disrupted?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've been working with the team and the team that's handling the file to fully understand that. But I've been in conversation with the DBIA and other stakeholders just to make sure that their voices are being heard. So I would say it's an ongoing process to fully understand that, but we are working interdepartmentally here to make sure that it's a core focus.
Through the chair, can you let us know what they're saying? Because the downtown businesses that I frequent, I don't think they're really aware of the impacts of this, what we're voting on and deciding on tonight. I think if they were presented what we're voting on in a very clear way, I think you'd hear a lot of feedback from people. So I'm interested in, it's positive to hear that you've been connecting with businesses in DBIA. What are they telling you when you're telling them that the city is potentially implementing something that's going to impact their convenience of collection and the reliability of the service?
Through you, Chair Beamer. Just to clarify, sorry, I've been connecting with the DBIA directly, so with Noor and the team there. They have issued a letter as well. I'm not sure if you've seen a copy of that. I believe they sent it to the MPP's office, but I can follow up with that. They are very much not in favor because they understand the impact it'll have on their businesses.
Thank you very much. And I think that's an important perspective, to be honest. Through the chair to Commissioner Simonovsky, if service is reduced or discontinued, what are the potential landfill capacity and diversion targets? Like, what's the impact on those?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair, negative for sure. And if I may, this is an information report, and the risk that you've described, Councillor, is a risk very concerning of staff as well. Our intention is to ensure that service is provided, and we will be actually bringing a report to council very shortly on the green bin expansion program as well for the downtown. So diversion, recycling, recovery is critical, both from an environmental, social perspective, as well as community services. So we will be fighting from our perspective to ensure that the service is maintained, whatever that involves. And if it involves future costs for the city, then that's something that we will have to bring back to this table for discussion as part of that process.
Awesome. Thanks, through Chair Beamer, to you again. You said we're just receiving this for information. I guess, what decision point do we at council need to prepare for to ensure the service continuity.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair, the decision point will be when the province releases its updated legislation around extended producer responsibility and what their position will be on the private sector paying for the collection and ensuring that that is done. The pressure right now is that the private sector is not enjoying the costs of recycling and managing their waste, which was something that was intended to be enforced on them as part of the provincial implementation over a decade ago. So there'll be a lot of interesting conversation if this goes back to the municipalities.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Burke. Any further comments or questions? Apologies, Councilor Day.
I didn't know, Mr. Chairman, if there was a mover.
I think, did you, Alex? No, it's okay.
I'd be happy to move it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councilor Duguay. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. Last item this evening, 12H, report on necessary measures taken to disinfect water treatment plant contact tank 2. Councilor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. Appreciate it. Let me just see Commissioner Simonovsky again. Busy night. My questions through Chair Beamer to you are this, and you know, I think this is a very easy report for us to skip over. But my first question is, who is directly responsible for ensuring that backup tanks remain operational?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the city of Peterborough, with regards to water safety, is heavily legislated and regulated. At the front line, we have the operational staff that report through up to me, and then from a policy perspective, council coming back down into the system. So that responsibility is also made, or that responsibility is administered through the decisions of the professional staff that are involved in the system. And this particular part of the tank, the chlorine contact tank 2, has been offline for a long period of time. It hasn't been needed. And I'm happy to talk more about what the issues are with contact tank 1. It's not a system that you would normally need to have available. It's something there as a redundancy.
So, but through the chair, we're obviously spending a significant amount of money to make it become functional. So could regular preventative cleaning could that have avoided this $170,000 expense?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, in the sense that any molding that would have occurred would have had to been dealt with on a regular basis, and that would have been costs that would have been incurred on a repeated timeline. I think it's important to recognize that with the chlorine contact chamber itself having having a redundancy in that the decisions to make operationally on whether it's contact tank 1 or contact tank 2 being used are then implemented as the staff make those decisions, and then those assets are prepared. In this case, with what had occurred in contact tank 1, there was some urgency in making that transition, but in either case, it's more cost effective to focus on keeping the unused assets available, but not necessarily in pristine condition, again, depending on the system that's being considered.
Thank you. Through the chair, though, if contact tank number 2 and Clearwell 4 are known backup systems, should they not have been kept in a state of operational readiness under the Safe Drinking Water Act?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they were ready for use as needed, and the intention of bringing them online was done based on a leak in contact tank 1 that, in the eyes of operations, needed to be repaired. So it wasn't so much that we would use contact tank 2 from an operational perspective. Having assets available from an emergency perspective is not uncommon. Often redundant pumps do that same function. So it's not a question of whether or not it's available. The criticality of all of our assets are done through a risk assessment, and every piece of the infrastructure is actually evaluated on its criticality and impact. This particular piece of equipment was not, or infrastructure was not a high risk based on the processes that we have in place. However, that being said, now that this has happened, that will be reviewed as part of our next operational review. And that's done as part of our drinking water quality management system. And the protocols are in place to make sure that anything that happens is evaluated, and any other recommendations that may be needed to be implemented based on what's occurred can then be recommended and brought forward.
Thank you. So finally, I'm hearing there is no existing schedule for cleaning and inspecting backup tanks, but potentially as part of your review to save us $170,000 in this case, it might be something that happens.
There will be a review. I would suggest that it wouldn't necessarily save the money because cleaning still costs money. However, it's definitely something to look at. And I take your point that you're much better off to be not in an emergency situation and be more in a non-emergency situation. So that's something that we definitely want to look at as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councilor, are you comfortable moving it, or you sure? Councilor, yeah, will.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And, goes without saying, Commissioner Szymanowski and the team did a high degree of due diligence before we took over the operation of the water on April 1st of this year. But a better question that might be asked is the previous operators, why was it isolated, emptied, and out of service during their time of operating the system? I'll leave it at that.
Okay, no need to comment. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mayor Lill. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Burke. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. All right, good job, everyone. We're done. We're up to a notice of motion. Notice of motion, Councillor Chica.
Thank you very much, Chair Beamer. I'm just looking forward to sharing this. I know it doesn't come as a surprise because it came up, the idea came up, quite some time ago in various discussions we've had about housing, about these two purple areas that this was the map that was presented at our last cycle related to the police station property at 1421 Lansdowne. The purple areas are vacant and have not been assigned for any purpose. And I know that with the discussion that we had as a council, that alternate uses such as perhaps zoning for housing development was something that we did talk about. So I just wanted to read the motion first, and then I'll speak to it in more detail. Thanks, Chair Beamer. Be it resolved that staff provide a report to the October 6th General Committee meeting with a proposal to sever all excess lands not required for the police station site at 1421 Lansdowne Street West, together with an estimate of market value revenue which could be generated from the sale thereof. And so speaking to that, the motivation for this is simply to reduce the burden from our taxpayers. We have some big ticket items that were on our recent last cycle agenda, and we know that things are unfolding in ways we didn't expect, and costs are greater than we had initially bargained for. Certainly with two police stations, a sports and entertainment center, when we're looking at these large capital projects, we need to think of creative ways to increase our revenue to offset some of the costs. So I really appreciate that Manager Faulkner provided just some information via email today to council in a cursory way. But the purpose of the report is to really fully define the parameters that have been stated in terms of the parameters that are viewed in the map, and to indicate an opinion of value, to obtain 3 opinions of value done by third-party agents so that it's fulsome. And this is a free service. And then we could just get that true estimate. We shouldn't wait on this. There's no time like now. We should use this revenue immediately. So the idea would be to debate whether we should sell this property sooner rather than later, so we could apply it to the capital costs we have and to truly try to do something to reduce the tax burden that we know lies ahead. It doesn't help the housing market if we sit on the property. We could easily build a 17-story development, or a developer could quite reasonably and feasibly on sites like the purple that we see here. So I urge you to support this motion. It's simply a motion to bring it back with a fulsome rendering of an opinion of value, and to really look at what we could gain, and to offset the future in terms of our number for the coming year. So thank you for considering it, and I think it's an important step. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chika. I have Councillor Hickey and Baldwin. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. At this time, I won't be supporting. Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you, John. It's very fast. At this time, it's not something that I would be supporting for a variety of reasons. One is we saw Mr. Faulkner's report, which I do agree with, but to sell what I believe is the last virgin pieces of land on Lansdowne Street before we can assess if there are other city needs, and the timing I don't think is appropriate at this time. One of the things that I did say, I'd be happy to sell the Parkway land since we're not building the Parkway. So let's sell those lands, and that's probably worth a lot more than this. I don't disagree that it's something that we should be looking at, but I think until we run it through its paces and see what possibilities exist for city use, it's not something that I would support at this time. The opinion of value are a lot different than an appraisal also. I can give an opinion, I give it all the time and it's wrong, most of it, not on real estate, but other things. But what you really want is an appraisal. And I think that that's something that Mr. Faulkner is capable of doing for sure. But if it was me advising a client at this time, I'd say hang on to it for 2 years. For two reasons. One is you don't know what you're going to use it for yourself, and the market is going to change in about 18 months, is what we figure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Hickey. I have Councillor Baldwin and Burke. Councillor Baldwin.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, I would concur with Councillor Hickey. He's mentioned many of the things I was going to reference. The difference between an appraisal and opinion of value are drastically different. I think it's just too soon, too premature in the process. And I would wait until we are a little further along, until we know what the requirements and needs are, A, for the two-site police station, and B, what other options the city might require going forward. So there's no compulsion to sell it sooner than later. I think by waiting and having the plan develop, we'll be in a much better position to know what those lands might be used for, possibly. And I would agree with Councillor Hickey. We're not having any more land, and as you hold on to assets, I believe they'll escalate in price. So I would hold off for now. As a result, I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Baldwin. Councillor Burke, Lachika, second time in real. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. I'll be supporting this, and I think it's really interesting because I didn't support buying Calvary in the first place, but the sales pitch to us from our staff at that time was about the great potential that the site held for us to be able to do what we needed to do with our city ambitions, but also be able to get involved in exactly what's being proposed tonight at some point. And I think if not now, when is the right time? Like the councillor's correct. You know, we're faced with a bunch of really heavy asks that are being put on the backs of the taxpayer. We are consistently seeing from our staff at budget time that the number to just maintain our status quo for our services is increasing exponentially. Last year was over 10% just to maintain the status quo. And like if you take what is being proposed to like the level of what you would do in your own household, if your expenses were always increasing and you needed to sort of look at your assets, I think it's very reasonable to look at our assets and see what the possibilities are. No one is presenting to staff or to council that the idea that we sell the property tonight. It is just we're taking the steps with this motion to be in a position to understand what our options are if we do need to decide to sell it. You know, Councillor Hakey, through the chair, Councillor Hakey said we received a report from Mr. Faulkner. It was an email. And I would like to see an actual report through this motion with the information that's being asked for, because, you know, it doesn't mean that we have to move ahead with developing the site. It just means that we have it in our toolbox come the day that we might need to look at our revenues. And, you know, revenues are an issue every budget. You look at the revenues at the parking garage. You know, you we are not there. The scales are tipping, and they are not tipping in our favor. And I think that it's about time that we look at creative ways to liquefy some of our assets, or at least look at what the possibilities are to liquefy some of our assets. And this is not just like we're not just throwing away the property. We're going to be able maybe potentially to get some revenue for it, but also through that we're able to get the revenue, but also we might be able to meet some of the other needs that are on our table as councillors who are making the decisions that we make. One of the things could be a great place, given its location, to create a bunch of housing. And so for those reasons, I support it. Again, this was the sales pitch that was given to us by staff all along, that this is a great deal for us because it is a developable piece of property. There's lots of land. And for that reason, I'm interested in hearing back from our staff on what the options would be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Lechika, second time.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. You know, appraisal has been mentioned, and an appraisal could be done as part of this to have a thorough report come back. Certainly, and if we needed to amend it to say that, if folks would be more amenable to have appraisal be included, we could do that. I just don't, I'm kind of shocked actually to hear that councillors are not willing to look at the possibility of finding ways to reduce our tax rate in the coming year. We know that what was presented to us about the police station already has isolated the police station area along with another building that is attached for future city use. So we're taken care of on a city level in terms of future city use. These are fallow areas that are sitting there. And we could be using this to generate the shortfall we'll be having because of the police ask that we have. 25 million. And we're looking at a sports and entertainment center. How can we afford this? We are beyond our debt ceiling and our taxpayers cannot bear the burden of this. How can we not consider something like this at this time? There's no time like the present. I urge you to support this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lechika. Councillor Reel, Mayor Leal, Councillor Baldwin. Councillor Reel.
Through the chair, I will be supporting the motion. I mean, one of the things that was appealed to me when we were buying this piece of property was the huge size of the property that we could sell off the front at some time. And behind, you forget that there's a huge piece of property behind this building. I would think the vista looking to the south would be an appealing thing to a developer of either building condos or whatever that overlook the south down to Lake Ontario. Give me a break. That was one of the appealing things to me, just not buying a building. Just last week, we heard the cost that have escalated in renovating buildings and the rest of this here, and we finally find out what the use of the building is. We bought the building and kind of a pig in a poke kind of thing. Well, I'm finding out now what we want to do with it, what the cost is going to be, and I think we have to pay for it some way. And that is of looking at what the property out front can be do, and if there's a developer that's interested in building or buying that and developing it, great. If there's a developer that's looking at the back of it and would like to buy that and build condos at the back, we're covering our costs. So I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reel. Mayor Leal.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I spent my public life being an advocate of not selling off strategic assets.
whether it's Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, whether it was people that wanted to buy pieces of the Greenbelt, or people in the Niagara Peninsula that wanted to buy up farmland, all strategic lands. I said no, no, and no. This is a strategic piece of land. And until we know exactly what the build out will be for our city needs, in my view, it's totally premature to move forward in this direction. This debate reminds me a little of 407. Have a quick sale, you'll balance your budget, and don't worry about the future. Well, as mayor, I'm worried about the future. The opportunity to allow the build out to proceed, see what the city of Peterborough needs are on that particular site. And if we want to look at leasing land to potential developers, I think that's something that could be looked at. Because if you lease, it gives you a perpetual tax flow, tax revenue for the city. You sell it off, it's a one-time injection, it's gone. But if you look at leasing down the road, after we meet our needs, that's something I think would be much more desirable.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Lewis. Councillor Baldwin, the second time.
Yeah, just quickly, I think the mayor has given a good synopsis of that. I think the assumption that's made by the councillor who had the notice of motion is that we're going to use potentially any revenue from that to pay down the potential increase to the taxpayer, and that may or may not be the best use of that money. Perhaps it should be put into a reserve fund so that we can use it and call upon it at a future time. So, you know, I'm not 100% sold on the notice of motion at this time. I thank the councillor for bringing it forward, and if it comes back in a couple of years, I think that's the appropriate time for it. We'll have things will be better known with respect to the two-state solution for the police station. It's interesting that the notice of motion centers on the police station as well, Mr. Chair. We have a lot of other properties in the city that might be excess. For example, waterfront. We've been buying up waterfront property since I've been on council, since it's 11 years now. And we've been holding those properties for all this time because we thought it was a good thing to do to be able to have access for the general public to waterfront. Well, if we're going to sell this one because it's connected to the police station, maybe we should be looking at all of the lands, all of the excess lands, if that's what we want to do. I'm not saying that's the motion, but it begs the bigger question. I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baldwin. Any further, Councillor Burke, a second time.
Chair Beamer, thank you. And through you, you know, I do agree with the previous speaker, and I think I forget where I asked this, but I know that we have a report coming from Mr. Faulkner that is going to look at the properties we hold. I don't think any one of us really have a sense of what that is. They did a similar thing with Peterborough Housing Corp, where they had a booklet with every unit that Peterborough Housing Corp had, and it was like, it was just for me, who's someone who's visual, that was so important to have in our hand. And I think it's a really good, I think we should have a sense of what property we're holding on to. But I think that's a good idea. I want to ask a question to the clerks or to Mr. Barber or to CAO Reyna or to Mr. Freeman. But the question is this, is that, like, listen, from day one, we've been told that the potential to develop this or lease it or do something with the land is a potential. And what are the implications of us voting this down tonight if it gets voted down? Would that mean that any motion to look at doing something on those lands would be considered a reconsideration?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I think, well, first of all, our procedure bylaw does indicate that any matter that has been resolved by council then would be a reconsideration going forward. So that's the first step. I think secondly, I would just offer that it does get rather site specific to understand what the future motion might be and what that would entail. So I think I would just remind council that any matter that is resolved by council would be a reconsideration. At the moment, there is a multi-step process in our procedure bylaw that does outline how that unfolds, whether it's a majority vote or otherwise. And again, I just reiterate that it's a bit difficult to understand what the future looks like or what that motion might be and what it might entail. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So through the chair, then, by by voting this down tonight, are we negating ourselves from having a clean vote in the future if we do decide, like some speakers have said, to not look into this right now? Let's save it for, I'd be more comfortable in 2 years, someone said. So are we negating ourselves from being able to have a clean vote on this?
Mr. Clerk?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, I think it would depend on the motion and what the future motion looks like to understand if it's how it's framed to understand if it is actually reconsideration or not. It's somewhat challenging to speak in a hypothetical term here this evening.
And so to follow up through the chair, I'm not speaking hypothetically. I'm asking if this exact motion were to come in 2 years from now or 5 years from now to sever the lands and to get a proposal with an estimate on market value and revenue, are we negating ourselves from being able to?
We're
have
not.
that?
No, we're not.
Cool.
Another term, 2 years, 6 years, we're not. I'm going to jump in here. Mr. Barber, Councillor Burke and Councillor Baldwin made a good point. I think a report was supposed to come on all our holdings. Do you know when that report's coming?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that Mr. Faulkner is aiming for the October 27th meeting, if I've got my date right.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barber. That's good news. I have Councillor Duguay and Councillor Baldwin for a third and final. Councillor Duguay?
Thank you, Chair Beamer, and I thank you, Councillor Chika, for the motion. I am concerned if we proceeded with this motion, there might be a perception that we are circumventing standard process on sale and disposal of land. Firstly. Secondly, when I consider the presentation that was made to this council, the very conceptual plan that was being spoken to shows essentially 4 quadrants of lands. 2 parcels of land on the front portion that are flagged as potential development. So I think that principle has been established in this conceptual plan, and we received that report. Secondly, they show an area for police use, and the balance is future city use. I understand the spirit and intent of the motion, but would be my perspective. It is my perspective. In my opinion, it's premature at this point until we can carefully explore, as Mayor Leola said, the city requirements available to this property. For example, there may be partnerships. Maybe the Peterborough Housing Corporation might express an interest in it. Like, there's all sorts of possibilities. We've just heard about a new funding announcement from our federal government. When I look at this site, I see, for example, very large surface parking areas and 3 acres that might be available for future development. And likely there'll be a mixed residential, commercial, very significant, dense development. Well, those surface parking areas might be better served as, for example, creating a parking structure. So there's still some time needed to carefully consider how the site might be appropriately used. And I understand the spirit and intent, but it's my opinion, Mr. Chairman, it is premature at this time. We have flagged, though, that the front roughly 3.5 acres is flagged as potential development. We haven't said what. And I think we need to receive Mr. Faulkner or Mr. Barber's report on other lands, so that we might strategically, as Councillor Baldwin has said, there may be other lands that are available in the queue that might be more appropriate for us to consider and deeming as surplus. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Duguay. I have Councillor Baldwin with third and final, and Councillor Lachika, third and final. Councillor Baldwin?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's not very often I get third and final, but with respect to the notice of motion there, I think
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Baldwin. Councillor Lachika, third and final.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify, all that is stated about the police station, it's referring to that swath of land, the land not required for the police station site. So the purple area, basically. There's no association with the police station, except for the fact that, as Councillor Burke said, this was sold to us as a council with the knowledge that there would be land that could be used for development for housing. And it was housing that was referred to. We are in a housing crisis. This is not a motion that is asking us to sell it now. And I feel like that's what's being interpreted and conveyed. It is not that. It is simply a fulsome report defining the parameters in more detail, getting an opinion of value based on three quotes and an appraisal. And let's find out how much it's worth, because maybe when it comes to budget time, we'll recognize that our debt ceiling is cracked through, and we cannot afford everything that we want to have. And we need to look at ways to generate revenue. That's simply what it is. It's let's see what we could do with it if we were to consider the sale of it. It is not about selling it now. So I can't see that if we close our eyes to information that we're going to be seeing clearly what we can be doing to reduce our tax burden. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lachika. Councillor Reel a second time. Councillor Crowley. Councillor Reel.
Through the chair, I sat on a council in my first term where the theme of that council and the mayor was that we should not be in the land business. And if there was a potential site for sale, then the developer should be the one that should be developing that land. And I take a look at a reference that was made a week ago by the police chief that the St. Paul's Church site was the site for an expansion of the police station. At that time, this council, or the council, previous council, had just renovated the police station that was supposed to be good for 15 or 20 years. So we did not buy the St. Paul's Church property, and the developer did. When the lands on Lansdowne Street come up, I thought it was a pretty good deal because of the bank of land that was out there that we could sell as a city at the time to develop those land by a developer. The city of Peterborough is not in the development business. We have developers that do that. But that is a great site on a main thoroughfare that could be sold at a premium to a developer to develop the property. Also, the lands behind could be sold, or if we have a need at Peterborough Housing Corp to build affordable housing, that land would become available. But I'm just going, different councils do different things. And I sat on a council where the mayor of the day said we shouldn't be in the land business, and so we weren't. We're on this council and we bought some land, which I thought was a pretty good deal for $15 million. I'm not a land speculator, I'm not a realtor, but I thought it was a pretty good deal. But for me, the excess land should be sold for development. I take exception to the fact that we're talking about the green belt and all the rest of that stuff in the 407 and all that stuff that has nothing to do with tonight's debate. It has to do with a motion that the councillor put on here to look at that land and what could be done with it. Sorry.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Reel. I have Councillor Crowley, Purnell, and Mayor Leal for a second time. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Chair. So through you two, maybe either Mr. Barber or Mr. Reyna, the report that we're going to be receiving from Mr. Faulkner, is it going to be including information on not only all of our land holdings, but also land holdings like 1421 Lansdowne? Will it include those lands as well in it?
My understanding is, I think Greg said there's a 12-page addendum to the report, so it's all the city's land holdings, including 1421.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be supporting the notice of motion for many of the reasons already stated. First of all, we shouldn't be discussing property matters and values in public. These are closed session items when you're talking about these things. We also own, through our solely owned Peterborough Housing Corporation, much land, many properties that needs to be redeveloped much faster than taking a very valuable strategic piece of property right now. So there's already a lot on the to-do list. And thirdly, there is no property behind that building that we own. It's all built out in the back, unless, you're talking about Harper Park, and that's a no-go for sure. So it is premature to be selling this very strategic property. We don't know its full intended use yet until we finish our whole needs assessment that our CIO is working on now, and how we're going to restructure our own employees and functions as a municipality. So that's all I really have to say on that. I will not be supporting the notice of motion. It's just too early to go down this path now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Pennell. I have Mayor Leal a second time and Duguay a second time. Mayor Leal.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I take some issue with what Councillor Real said. I'm just giving you my time in public life, my perspective on my commitment to protect strategic resources, whether it was at the provincial level or the municipal. That's just my philosophy, protecting strategic resources. And I stand by that. And Mr. Chair, I want to ask a question, because there was a inference tonight about cracking through our debt ceiling. What's our latest credit rating, Mr. Friedman? And are we, quote unquote, breaking through that debt ceiling?
Mr. Chairman, our current credit rating as evaluated by Standard & Poor's is AA+. For municipality our size, that is a very good credit rating. No, we are not cracking through our debt ceiling presently. We are under our self-imposed debt limit of 20% of all revenues, all own purpose revenues, and which is lower than the 25% that is the provincial threshold. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Mr. Chair. We have to be cautious when we make statements like that are not factually correct.
Thank you, Councillor. What's your point of order, Councillor Chica?
I did not say we are currently cracking through our debt ceiling. I said as we approach budget time, we need to make sure that we don't go that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chica. Thank you, Mayor Leal. Councillor Duguay a second time, Councillor Burke a third, and then we'll try to wrap this up. Councillor Duguay a second time.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to call the question.
Moved by Councillor Duguay to call the question. That is carried. Thank you. So we'll vote on the notice of motion moved by Councillor Chica. And that is lost. All right, other business, Councillor, we'll go Councillor Duguay and then Councillor Purnell. Councillor Duguay, other business?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might, I'd like to acknowledge that one of our colleagues will be celebrating a birthday tomorrow. That is Councillor Hickey. He'll be turning a young age of 70 years. Happy birthday, Councillor Hickey.
Happy birthday, Councillor Hickey. Other business, Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am happy to report another, some happy news, especially to all of my fellow tree huggers out there. We are having our annual Trees for Peterborough event this Saturday, September 20th, from 11 o'clock a.m. to 2 p.m. This one will take place in Monaghan Ward again, Wedgwood Park, 1535 Fairmount Boulevard. We do welcome volunteers to go to the city website and register. We do need to know how many volunteers are coming. Please bring your own refillable water bottle and a shovel if you have. We will have some extra shovels, but if you can bring one, that would be helpful. We will be planting 500 new medium-sized trees in pre-dug holes. Thank you to our staff and sponsors, plus 20 big caliber trees. Those will be planted by staff. Community service hours are available to any of our high school students out there who would like to join us. And very quickly, I would like to acknowledge that from day one of this years ago, Councillor Duguay, before he was even a councillor, joined me with Rotary in organizing this event. And our sponsors, RBC, the Excelsior Group, and Drew Merritt Home Hardware, they have been sponsors every single year, and new sponsors this year are Eastside Mario's, who will be providing lunch for us, and Super 8 Motel is a brand new sponsor. So it's a real fun, feel good event for everybody who wants to plant trees and add to our urban forest. And special thanks to our commissioner and Leanne Howard in our urban forestry technician. Absolutely amazing efforts on their behalf. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purnell, and a big thank you to you, Councillor Purnell, because this is something that you have championed year after year after year after year. You organize it, you put it together, so kudos to you, and on behalf of the community, thank you for all your hard work. Any other business? Just a friendly reminder to the community, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. is the Civic Awards, McDonald Street Community Center, 6 p.m. We hope to see you there. It's going to be a great event. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Burke. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, staff. Thanks for those in the community watching.